Hello and welcome to Finextra. I'm Josie Waite and I'm here with Hamish Thomas from EY, and we are talking about PSD2 and open banking. Thank you for joining me, Hamish.
Thank you very much for having me.
There is clearly a lot going on across the industry with PSD2, open banking and other regulatory initiatives. How does all this change fit together?
Well, I think you're right, there is a lot going on. I think it's important to look at that holistically in terms of how all these things overlap. So I think probably the most closely related are PSD2, GDPR, and then from a UK perspective, the wider open banking. On the one hand, we have PSD2 and open banking who are setting a course for increased ability to share data, share our data with not just the institutions with whom we directly bank, but third parties to allow them to provide a wider range of products and services and to initiate payments on our behalf with our permission, of course. Then the counterpoint to that is GDPR. Much more focused on data protection, data control, permissions, being clear on how data is being managed and stored and looked after. So it's important to strike that balance and look at these holistically when delivering against all this regulation, so you have that balance between the openness, the sharing, and also the control and the protection. Now that is further complicated by a wider set of regulations such as structural reform or ring fencing, and also regulation in place to help with security, fraud and financial crime. So again, important to strike that balance between the innovation, the competition and the access that is driving improved customer outcomes, but to balance that with the critical need for stability and security of our financial services and to manage the threat of fraud and financial crime.
What do open APIs mean for bank consumers?
So if we look at open APIs specifically, to be honest, they don't really mean an awful lot to consumers. They're effectively a technical enabler. Perhaps the interesting question is, what does open banking mean to consumers? When we look at that, there are a number of ways to look at it. I like to summarise it across 4 areas. The first, I would say, choice. So the potential for increased choice in terms of the products and the services that we have access to, and also the providers who deliver them for us. And then related to that, we have customisation. So we look at those products and services. There will be opportunity to perhaps more specifically choose which products and services from which providers that we can bundle together to give us the experience and the engagement with financial services that we're seeking. I then add to that control. So control over our data, control over who accesses that data, control over how we engage with this breadth of new providers. And then finally, I'd talk about coverage. So when we talk about coverage, I mean, there are those in segments across our society who perhaps are not well served by financial services, perhaps are to a degree excluded because of the services they need or they can trust, or indeed other aspects such as the sophistication of credit rating or the types of offers that are made to certain members of our community. And we look at the potential of open banking to provide more specific products and services to those segments who are underserved, and there perhaps increase that coverage across all participants in what can be provided and how they consume it. So really, in summary, I would talk about choice, I would talk about coverage, control, and the customisation that the promise of open banking can bring.
What needs to be done to give confidence in open banking adoption?
Confidence in adoption comes from a number of areas. I think one of the most important would be trust. That is to say, the trust that we have as consumers in those institutions who are providing open banking services. And that may be banks, other payment service providers, the third parties who might access our accounts and use our data on our behalf. And we all need to trust the actions and the security and the stability of those services. Another dimension I would talk to would be awareness and education. So some of the research that we have done shows that the majority of consumers really don't know what open banking is. What does it mean? What potential does it bring? What are the benefits that they could have? And also how the risks around that are being managed, that would help them with their concerns. And therefore there is a need for sort of coherent, simple messaging across the industry to help people understand what this means, the potential it can bring. And then finally, I talk about the propositions, the products and services. So relevance. They need to be relevant to consumers. They need to be useful. They need to be things that will ease our everyday lives and the way in which we consume and engage with financial services in terms of ease of access, ease of use, and the experience that they provide. So in summary, that would really be around the trust, the education and the awareness, and then the relevance of the products and services that all participants, both established and new, will be bringing to the market. So ultimately, what is really needed is the actions of banks, other service providers, and all those involved in the open banking end-to-end service to really put consumers and what they need at the heart of what they deliver, to engender that trust, to provide that awareness and education, and to maintain that relevance. And I think in that way, we will be able to increase our confidence in the success of open banking.
Hamish, thank you. It's been great speaking with you today.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.